welcome to our Missouri Valley Conference Tournament episode of the Redbird Rundown. I'm Assistant Sports Editor Joe Deacon here with my good friend, Illinois State beat reporter Jim Benson. Jim, are you geared up for Arch Madness?
Best time of the year, Joseph.
Indeed it is. So the regular season ended with the Redbirds at 19-11 overall, 11-7 in Valley play after a 69-67 overtime win Saturday at Evansville, with Deshaun Knight hitting the game winner in the final seconds. And for once, ISU was able to pull out a close one right at the end. What impressed you or concerned you about the last game there?
Well, what impressed me was their execution both at the end of regulation and overtime. I think it showed a lot of maturity of the team throughout the year. We hadn't seen that, like you said, really during the regular season, but both times at the end of regulation and overtime, they didn't panic. They got a great shot. That was very encouraging to see. The discouraging part was that they were up by about 8 points with 7 minutes left, and they let Evansville get back in the game. They couldn't put it away. That was a little bit discouraging. But it was a road game, though, and they were able to pull it out on the road, so it was a good high for them coming into St. Louis.
Yep, and it looks like all five starters with 9 points or more. Devon Kuhn-Purcell again with 16 points and 9 boards. They're really starting to round into shape as a unit, it looks like.
Yeah, they are. They had a lot of injuries, and it just takes a while to get used to playing with the same guys, and now they got a rotation kind of set up right now. So, I mean, it couldn't be better for them, at this time of year going into the tournament. It's health-wise and rotation-wise, it's there for them.
Yep. So the Redbirds technically tied Indiana State for third place in the Valley, but the Shockers held the tiebreaker. So ISU is now the number 4 seed in St. Louis, and that means a quarterfinal rematch with Evansville on Friday.
Yeah, the same thing happened 2 years ago. They played Northern Iowa the last game of the regular season. ISU lost, and it was their second loss of the season to Northern Iowa, and then they beat them in St. Louis. I asked Dan Muller if he's going to bring that up, and he said, he's not going to probably bring it up too much because nobody on that team from 2 years ago is still on the team this year. But I bet you he brings it up a little bit. And I don't think there'll be a lot of overconfidence with them as far as Evansville because they did only win by 1 point in overtime 6 days ago. It's not like if they would have beat them by 26 like they did the first time on Saturday, then you'd have to worry about that thing a little bit. But I really don't think there's going to be any overconfidence. And, the other thing was, Indiana State they might have got the 3 seed, but they might have got the worst end of the draw because now they get to play a Loyola team that's playing very well. They got their best player back the last game of the season. So, maybe playing Evansville for a third time isn't as bad as playing Loyola with Doyle back.
Yeah, indeed, and the Ramblers are definitely dangerous now.
Yes, they are.
Mosier's got a squad there.
Yes, he does.
So as you kind of pointed out, one thing you do hear a lot around this time of the year is that it is difficult to beat a team 3 times, and that's now what the Redbirds have to do. But the flip side of that argument is kind of like you said, ISU kind of might have a little bit of confidence knowing they beat them twice, and yet not overconfidence because it was such a close game.
Yeah, I think it played out pretty good. It was a road game, and they were able to sneak by on the road against Evansville. Like I said, if the last game would have been the home game they played against them and just drilled them, then maybe as a coach, especially as a coach, you really worry about it. But I think the way it played out Saturday was really perfect.
Yeah, well, one thing we do know is that Dan Muller and the players can't afford to look beyond Evansville, but we, of course, can. So if ISU wins, a semifinal date with top-seeded Wichita State is probably likely. What would the Redbirds need to do to pull off an upset against the Shockers and keep their chances alive for the tourney title?
Well, they've lost to them 7 times in a row in the last 3 seasons. So
maybe they're due.
Maybe they're due. Maybe they're due. Actually, 3 years ago, it was kind of the same scenario. They got into the semifinals with Wichita State was the number 1 seed, and ISU actually won. But the first thing you have to do against Wichita, you have to make some shots. You don't have to shoot 50% from the field, but you have to make some shots. If you can shoot 40 to 43%, that gives you a great chance. The second thing you have to do is you have to rebound. If you let them have a +10 margin on the boards, they're going to beat you. So I say first thing is make some shots, and second thing is hold your own or even have a little bit of an edge on the rebounding.
Yeah, and so if the Redbirds happen to fall to either Evansville or Wichita State, or even in the title game should they get there, they definitely won't be going to the NCAA tournament. So what would the prospects be for getting a call to the NCAA or NIT tournament beyond that?
A lot of people right now think they're already in the NIT. I don't. I think they need to beat Evansville Friday. I think if they beat Evansville Friday, they have a great chance of getting in it. The 2 Valley teams are going to get in the NCAA tournament for sure. So if somebody else wins the tournament besides UNI or Wichita State, the Valley will get 3 teams in. But let's say Wichita State or UNI wins the league tournament. Well, then the Valley is usually represented in the NIT. It's not going to be Indiana State. They're 15-15. Even if they won 2 games and lost one, 17-16, the the NIT is not going to take in Indiana State at 17-16. Their non-conference season was just too bad. And the other one is Evansville, perhaps. Let's say Evansville beats even if they beat ISU and lost to Wichita, Evansville still's RPI is 112 right now. Illinois State's is 77. Illinois State has a very solid RPI, and if they could beat Evansville, and even if they would lose to Wichita, their RPI is probably going to go up from there. So I think they have a great chance of being an NIT if they win on Friday against Evansville. Even if they lost, I think they'd still have maybe a 50% chance.
Okay. Well, and now the one thing we did see on Saturday outside of Illinois State was the big showdown between Wichita and UNI on the national TV market, and they probably have to be the 2 favorites. Who do you expect to win this tournament?
UNI.
You're picking the Panthers?
I'm picking the Panthers. I think they have seniors, and their seniors have they've never won a Valley tournament game, any tournament game. And I think losing to Wichita State in the last day of the season, it was a great atmosphere in Wichita and all that. But I think they have a little bit of an edge here, something to prove in St. Louis. And I think actually they might have got the better half of the draw, not having to play Illinois State in the semifinals. I think everybody fears Illinois State in the league outside of UNI and Wichita State. So I think for UNI to be the second, and they would have to play possibly Indiana State or Loyola in the semifinal game, would be an easier road than Wichita State. And UNI's depth, too, I think really helps in a 3-game tournament. They play a lot of guys, and when you're playing on that Sunday for the 3rd game in 3 days, if you're playing a lot of guys, and a lot of quality guys, too, not just playing guys, but quality guys, I think that's going to pull them through in St. Louis. So I'm picking UNI.
All right, you're picking the Panthers, even though Wichita won pretty convincing.
I'm picking the Panthers.
All right, that sounds good. So, Jim, you're going to head down to St. Louis on Thursday. And then sports editor Randy Kindred is going to meet you down there on Friday. So we'll have team coverage of the whole tournament run for the Redbirds. You can follow both Jim and Randy on Twitter. They're normal Twitter accounts, and you can read their in-depth reports in your daily editions of the Pantagraph and right here on Pantagraph.com. Thanks for watching.